Hello everyone, welcome to Cloud Computing Lecture. I'm Professor Sahebgouda Patil, Department of Computer Science and Engineering, BLDEACET Vijaypura. So in this lecture, I'll be talking about cloud computing applications and paradigms. So we'll see one by one what are the applications and what are the paradigms that is with respect to the cloud computing. So these are the contents which I'm going to cover in the today's class, that is cloud application, then challenges for cloud computing. Though we have many advantages of cloud computing, we have few challenges that we can see in the today's lecture. So these two concepts I'm going to cover in the today's session. So we talk about cloud applications. So cloud computing is a very attractive to users for several economic reasons. So because we have some economic reasons, so cloud becomes so attractive. So what are those reasons? The reasons are it requires a very low infrastructure investment because there is no need to assemble and maintain a large scale system, and it has low utility based computing. So low infrastructure investment is one of the reason for the cloud computing become more attractive. Then another reason, that is it has low utility based computing costs because the customers are only billed for the infrastructure they have used. So how much infrastructure they are going to make use, for that only they are supposed to pay. So that is one of the factors that we can say that low cost, for customers are only billed for the resources which they are going to use. Okay, so these are the two reasons where these two are the economic reasons where cloud computing is very attractive to users. Then next we have convenience and performance. So convenience and performance, how it is relevant to the cloud application. So moreover, because application developers enjoy the advantages of just-in-time infrastructure, they are free to design an application without being concerned with the system where the application will run. So the application developers, they're not bothered about where exactly the application is going to run. They are just bother about designing an application. Okay, so that is what. So design an application without being concerned with the system where the application will run. Okay, they are not bothered about where exactly the application is going to run. The next, cloud computing is also beneficial for the service providers of computing cycles because it typically leads to more efficient resource utilization. So because we use more resource utilization, so that will be more advantageous for the cloud service provider. So here we have the service provider. For the service providers, the computing, it typically leads to higher level of resource utilization. So next we have the appeal of cloud computing is its focus on enterprise application. So we talk about applications, right? So mainly it focuses on the enterprise application. This clearly differentiates it from the grid computing efforts, which was largely focused on the scientific and engineering application. Remember the grid computing, okay, before cloud computing comes into the picture, we had a grid computing. So this grid computing, which mainly focuses on the applications such as a scientific application. One is scientific application, then another one is engineering applications. So these are the main two applications where it is the grid computing was focused. But coming to the cloud computing, it mainly focuses on the enterprise application. Okay, so this is all about the cloud application. So next we have a few more points about cloud applications that we can see. The ideal application for cloud computing. So ideal applications for cloud computing means we have the web services, database services, we have web services, database services, and transaction based services are ideal application. So these three are called as what? Web service, database service, and transaction based services are ideal applications for the cloud computing. The main attraction of cloud computing is the ability to use as many servers. Okay, it uses as many servers. So service provider, where it provides the services with the help of server to the consumer or a user, it provides many servers as necessary to optimally respond to the cost and the timing constraint of an application. Timing constraint means whenever the user requires such services, so the user can fetch the services from the servers, okay, which are present in the cloud. And so far we have discussed it like, okay, cloud applications. So there are like applications unlikely to perform well, unlikely to perform well on a cloud. So what does it mean? So it means that not all applications are suitable for the cloud computing. Okay, listen. So far we have gone through some of the enterprise application, but here not all applications are suitable for the cloud computing. So like applications for which the workload cannot be arbitrarily partitioned or that require intensive communication among concurrent instances are unlikely to perform well on a cloud. So these are the reason where the applications are unlikely to perform on a cloud. So an application with a complex workflow, okay, an application with complex workflow, what happens? The application with complex workflow and multiple dependencies, as it's often the case in high performance computing, cloud requires longer execution time and higher costs. Okay, these are the main reasons. So here it requires high performance computing, and it also concerned about the it require longer execution time as well as cost. Okay, as well as cost. So it takes more cost and it will take more time for the execution. That is why we call it as a longer execution. So these are the some of the reason where the applications with a complex workflow with multiple dependencies, so which required more cost as well as more time for the execution. So these all are with respect to the cloud application. Next, we have challenges. So challenges for the cloud application development. As I told you, though cloud, it has very good advantages, still we have few challenges that we can see one by one. So challenges like performance isolation, reliability, cloud infrastructure, and some of the data logging concept. Okay, we can see one by one. What happens with respect to the challenges? The development of efficient cloud applications, it inherits the challenges posed by the natural imbalance among computing, input output, and communication bandwidth of a physical system. So these challenges are greatly amplified due to the scale of the system. It means its distributed nature and the fact that virtually all applications are data intensive. So remember, so most of the applications on the cloud, they are data intensive. What do you mean by data intensive? Because the most of the data we are going to store on the cloud, okay, using S3. Okay, you might have remembered these storage devices. So S3, simple DB. So these we use for the storage of the data on the cloud. So the most of the data we are going to store on the database, or we can call it as a data center. So that is why we call it as it is a data intensive application. So one of the main advantage of cloud computing is the shared infrastructure. So what happens? The infrastructure, if we share, so we can save the space. Okay, that cost will be reduced by sharing the infrastructure. Okay, so cloud have a negative impact as well. Okay, for sharing the infrastructure, we have the negative impact as well. What are those? The negative impact, like I have told you, the performance isolation. This is one of the negative impact. Performance isolation is nearly impossible to reach in a real system, especially when the system is heavily loaded. Especially what? When the system is heavily loaded, then it it reaches the performance isolation. The next we have reliability. So what do you mean by reliability? So reliability is also a major concern in the cloud computing. Node failures are to be expected. So what happens here? Node failure, or we can call this server failures, are to be expected whenever a large number of nodes cooperate for the computations. So whenever there is a like large number of nodes or servers, they cooperate for the computation, there may be a chances of failure of the node or a failure of the server. So when server fails, then it the whatever the consumer, whatever the user, they require data which is especially from that particular server, they cannot able to get the data, so they cannot able to get the services from that particular server. So that is one of the major concern. What is that? Reliability. Then next we have efficiency. So here efficiency, consistency, and communication scalability are also we consider as a major concern for the application developer. So what are those major concern for the application developer? So efficiency is one of the major concern for the application developer. Then we have the communication. Okay, communication, scalability are the major concern for the application developer. So here we have, after reliability, the next concept, that is cloud infrastructure. So cloud infrastructure exhibits latency and bandwidth fluctuations, so which affect the application performance. So the factor, that is latency and bandwidth fluctuation, okay, so which mainly affect the application performance of the cloud infrastructure. So we have data storage. So where we are going to store the data? So the main concept, that is data storage. So data storage plays a critical role in the performance of any data intensive application. So the organization of the storage location, and the storage bandwidth must be carefully analyzed to lead optimal application performance. So to meet the optimal application performance, so we need to worry about the data storage. Okay, where exactly data is stored, the location of the data, and the bandwidth of the data. We need to analyze carefully. We need to analyze carefully to lead to optimal application performance. So I was talking about data intensive application. So many data intensive application, they use the metadata. I think you might have heard this term. You might have come across in the database management system. Metadata means the data which describes the other data. Like for example, we can see many data intensive applications use metadata associated with individual data records. Like for example, the metadata for an M.Tech audio file. M.Tech is a audio file. Okay, M.Tech is a audio file. For this audio file, it may include the name of the song, then singer, recording information, and so on. This name of the song, singer information, recording information, this is nothing but a metadata of what? M.Tech file. Okay, understood? What do you mean by metadata? Okay. So another important concept, that is we talk about data logging. Okay. So what do you mean by data logging? Another important consideration for the application developer is logging. Logging means a performance consideration which limit the amount of data logging, whereas the ability to identify the source of unexpected results. What do you mean by that? It is the ability to identify the source of unexpected results and errors is helped by frequent logging. Okay, what happens when we logging frequently? So there is the ability to identify the source of unexpected results and errors. So this logging is typically done using the instance storage reserved only for the lifetime of the instance. Thus, measures to preserve the logs for a post-mortem analysis must be taken. So this is another what we can say challenges of the cloud computing. So another challenge awaiting resolution is related to the software licensing. So software licensing is one of the challenge, software licensing. So this particular software licensing concept that we can see in the next chapter in detail. What is software licensing? Okay, so how it is affect the cloud computing. So these are some of the challenges of the cloud computing. Hope you have understood the challenges of the cloud computing. The main challenges are like performance as isolation, reliability, how the challenges related to the cloud infrastructure, and what do you mean by data logging, how it affect, and what do you mean by metadata. Okay, so these are the what some of the cloud challenges for the cloud computing, the cloud application development. Okay, thank you so much for your patience listening. Please like the video, share the video, and subscribe the channel. Thank you so much.